Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. I've received this Ginzan Onsen book nook by Anavrin a few months ago. I've already assembled it and shared the videos on my Instagram account, but I didn't have the time to edit the video for my YouTube. So I'm kinda late, but I still wanted to share it. The design of this Ginzan Onsen reminds me of the bathhouse from Spirited Away, which is by far one of my favorite childhood movies. That's why I was really excited to receive this book nook and trying to turn it into the bathhouse from Spirited Away to the best of my abilities. This book nook has some moving mechanics and also lights, but they don't work with batteries. Instead, you need to plug the cable into a power outlet. There is no glue included in the set, so you should get your own. I am using the German brand Uhu. I'm also using my own sandpaper and wax. They are not necessary, but I prefer using sandpaper for a smooth surface. I must say I was kind of disappointed about the fact that they didn't include sandpaper in this kit. Luckily, I had some old sandpaper lying around at home from previous DIY works, and I'm glad that I didn't throw them away. As for the wax, it can be used for smoothing out the wooden wheels that will be used for the mechanics, like this one right here. As you can see, there's a little gap, and I wasn't sure if that's how it's supposed to look, but apparently it is, so don't worry. And yes, my wax is too big for this kind of work, but I have no other one at home. This rubber band right here is very important. It's for removing the paper background, and I recommend using a very good glue for gluing this onto the wood. Otherwise, it will just keep coming off. I actually had some issues with it, but I'll show you later in the video. The manual had some errors in it, which made it a little difficult to find the pieces. As you can see here, the actual piece has a hole in it, but it's not shown. So it makes you question if you've picked the right piece or not, or the numbers were incorrect, which also made it difficult to find the right pieces. That's why I've tried to show every step in my video, so I hope it helps when you're assembling your own book nook. I've also made some small mistakes on the way, but luckily I've realized them soon enough, and I'll comment those parts in the video as well, in hopes that you won't make the same mistakes as I did. I also recommend using pliers, since The small parts are really tricky to get them in, and after a while your fingers will hurt from all the pressing and pushing. And here comes a big mistake. I've broken a very central piece and there are no additional ones. So I've tried to fix it with my glue. After applying the glue, I've fixed the part with a paper clip and waited for it to dry. Afterwards, as you can see, I've carefully removed it. It was still fragile, so I've decided to wrap some tape around it, and luckily it worked. And yet another challenge arises. This part was super tricky, and I must say it was frustrating.
A few moments later.
It may look easy, but trust me, it was not. I couldn't get this small piece through because the gap was just too small.
One eternity later.
So I've decided to cut the piece and make the hole bigger. I've also broken one of the pieces in the process, but luckily they had some additional ones. If you're struggling, like I do here, just grab a knife and cut some of the wood inside, but be careful because it can break easily. Just one more left is what I thought, but there were actually more to come. Well, I didn't know it back then, so I was just, being happy, celebrating and all. And just when I thought that the difficult part was over, it was not. Get yourself a plier, otherwise you won't get this small piece through. And then I had to go through this again 3 more times, so I cut the video short. And that's how it looks. Another close-up for the small part. Frustrating it may be. After many broken pieces, I still did it, and I'm proud of myself. After this difficult experience, I had to take a break for a few days. Just kidding, but I did take a break, but it wasn't because of the difficulty. I just had classes and work to do. I must say that I'm a patient person, and I do enjoy a creative challenge. And another challenge was this part. The wall just didn't connect to the base piece, and there was a gap. I've soon realized that this wooden piece was at fault, in fact these two. So I just took my knife out and cut the corner of the wooden pieces, which was hindering the wall from connecting to the base piece. Here is another error in the manual. The piece is just brown and not gray and without a pattern. There were in fact many errors with the pieces and numbers in the manual, but I didn't show them all. Otherwise the video would have taken too long. Oh, but here's my favorite piece, the red bridge, which reminds me of the bridge from Spirited Away, along with the train station where Chihiro takes the train and No Face comes along. Here comes another reminder. The piece that I've just glued next to the train rails on the ground, don't glue it just yet. As you can see, you have to stick the bench onto it first and then glue it afterwards. Otherwise it just gets tricky. I wanted to have Chihiro and No Face sitting in the train, so I've decided to paint them. The piece is super small, so I couldn't add that many details, but I think it turned out quite well. Here comes another small mistake. I've closed the sides of the train before adding the drawing, so I slightly opened the sides and fixed it. I wanted to have a no-face sitting on the bench and waiting for the train. I've used air dry clay, painted him with acrylic colors and glued him onto the bench. And here's how it looks. Isn't he adorable? Alright, so it can look a little challenging with all of these wires, but let me explain. It's not that difficult. There are 3 black and 3 red wires on the right side. First, you should pull the red and black ones that are stuck together a little bit apart. I couldn't do it with my fingers, so I made a slight cut and then pulled them apart, but be careful. And then you just take all the black ones, put them together and twirl the end of the wires. And then you just put them through the blue hole and close it up. Next, take the red wire that I've just shown you and just connect it to the orange hole. And that just leaves us with the 2 red wires. Connect them to the yellow hole, and that's basically it for the right part. On the left side we have 3 black wires and 4 red wires. Just like before, you slightly pull them apart, the wires that are together, and then you connect the 3 black ones and into the blue hole, just like before. On the left side we have this additional red wire from the switch. Just connect it to the orange hole. And all that's left are the 3 red wires. Connect them together, twirl the ends, and put them into the yellow hole. That's basically it. And then you can just, slightly press everything down, and that's how it looks. I was wondering why they had included 3 prints of this paper, and sadly I've realized why, and I'll show you guys. Here I am just gluing it together, and I've used these paper clips and waited until it dried and took them off. Getting the cable through was a challenge. I've used a plier to help me, as you can see. They've included 2 different cables. I'm using the USB one. And it's time to test it. As you can see, after a few seconds, the paper got stuck. I was looking for the problem, and here's how I found it. Oh. As you can see, for some reason the rubber came off, so I had to pull the paper apart, which I had glued so well. I fixed it, and here's my second attempt. And sadly it got stuck again. I had to tear off the paper, and that's how I understood why they've included 3 prints of the paper. Here I'm showing you how to stick the rubber again. And I had to use the print that I had previously experimented on with some drawings. Initially I wasn't going to use it, but I had no other choice. I didn't record that part, but the rubber came off again. As a last resort, I've used super glue, and I'm hoping it won't come off again. For these parts, there were not enough red wooden pieces. There was one missing in the set, so I've left the center part out, as you can see. I had forgotten to remove the paper on the back of these plastic pieces, but I've done it later on, so just a reminder to you, don't forget it. And I had also forgotten to add these pictures on both sides, plus the balconies. And this is another measuring mistake by the company. As you can see, the roof doesn't fit. So I've decided to cut one of the edges and glue the roof. I had to cut it on the other side as well. Repeat the process again and you will have two buildings. Here I'm showing you how it will look after sticking the buildings, but I couldn't get them through the designated holes. So I've decided to cut them a little thinner like this. I've decided to add some of the characters from Spirited Away next to the printed people on this glass. For that, I've printed some of the characters and painted some of them, and then cut the paper and glued it onto the glass. As you can see, I've hidden some of them, and I'm curious to see if you can find them all. I'd love to know in the comments which ones you have found. While I was assembling this, coincidentally, a nearby movie theater was streaming Spirited Away. Of course, I had to buy tickets and went there with my friend. While watching the movie again, I've realized so many details I hadn't paid attention before, thanks to this book nook, which included the same parts in this Ginzan Onsen. I've added some screenshots from Spirited Away as comparison. I'll show it to you in a minute. After adding the trees, I'm finally done. The journey was very long, but I've enjoyed every second of it. Here you can see some of the characters in the windows. Here we have the famous bridge and the back entrance with the ladder. And of course the famous pipes that made our hearts skip a beat. Here are the stairs on the left and the train right next to it. Of course with Chihiro and No Face sitting in there, and the clay No Face on the bench. I must say, this is by far one of my favorite miniature houses. Let me know in the comments if you love it as much as I do.